we're going to be talking about sleep. My name is Dr. Kymberly Larson. I am the owner of Marvelous Minds, a family behavioral health clinic in downtown Glen Ellen. Very excited to be remotely at the library tonight. The Glen Ellen Public Library puts on all these amazing programs, and I'm very lucky to get to be a part of that. So without further ado, we are going to, I'm going to share my slides with y'all so you can see what I'm talking about here. All right. Hopefully everybody can see a big orange slide with a sloth. All right. So I'm a pediatric neuropsychologist, and it's my job to help families figure out when something's not quite going right with one of their children. So maybe they're struggling with attention in school. Maybe they're having killer temper tantrums at home. Maybe reading is not coming along as readily as the other children. So they come here for an assessment, and I get to look at the big picture. I get to look at all the different pieces of the kid's life and their cognitive and physiological and behavioral and emotional lives, and try to figure out what's not working. And there's a common element in every child, every family that I see that is often overlooked in traditional medicine and even in a lot of mental health, and that's sleep. And so that's why we're talking about sleep tonight, because this is really, really important. Okay. See if I can get my slides moving. Okay. So too often in this busy world, we ignore the very foundations of mental and physical health. So things like sleep, nutrition, exercise, those are the things that really help our body be able to function. And we really need that functioning so that our minds function. So tonight we're going to be talking about why are we even talking about sleep? Why is this so difficult, right? What is the purpose of sleep? And then the implications of poor sleep or sleep deprivation, which include physiological, safety, emotional, behavioral, and cognitive implications. We're going to talk about sleep and teenagers, in particular the teenage brain, and why it makes it so much more difficult for them to get sleep in today's society. We'll be talking about sleep hygiene, which is a fun way of just saying like good sleep habits. We'll talk briefly about how much sleep do children need at different points in their lives. And then I'd like to open it up to a Q&A. So if you have specific questions about sleep or your families and sleep routines or positive sleep practices, that you can go ahead and ask, and hopefully other people will be curious also. Okay. All right. So why is sleep so hard? Sleep is one of the most important foundations for the healthy brain and body, and it's also one of the most overlooked and ignored. We live in a society that really values productivity and getting things done, checking things off the list, right? We prioritize those type of things over our own physical health, right? We say things like sleep is for the weak, I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? Like we have this kind of attitude that the more we do, the better we are, the more successful we are. We also tend to overschedule not only ourselves, but our kids, right? How many activities, does an 8-year-old really need to have before it's too much? We tend to think of personal success as how much we can get done rather than how well we may get it done, or what, the importance of what we're actually doing. Okay, so what happens during sleep? Why is this so important? That we're all sitting here tonight talking about it. So there are several functions of sleep, and we're just going to go over those real quickly. Um, Even though our bodies are resting during sleep, our minds are actually quite active. Our brain is telling our body to eliminate toxins, to repair muscles. We're creating new neurons and pathways in our brain. We're conserving and storing energy. We're modulating our immune system. We're managing our executive functions and psychological states. Sleep also allows us to consolidate memories. And when you think about memories with children, we're talking about learning, right? All the new stuff that gets in their head every day, right? We need to consolidate it so that they know it tomorrow. That is learning, and that happens during sleep. So said in a different way, sleep allows our children to learn, to pay attention, to fight off disease, to heal from injuries, to feel good about themselves, and to grow into adults. Right? That's huge. That's why we're talking about this. All right. So, implications of poor sleep. So, if you do not get enough sleep, what happens? Research shows that children who do not get an average of eight hours of sleep per night are considered sleep deprived. And those children, interestingly, perform the same, like you cannot tell the difference between a sleep deprived child and a child with attention deficit disorder combined type, meaning they're both hyperactive and inattentive. A little side note on that, people ask why there's so much more ADHD today than there was when I was a kid or whatever. And I believe this is part of the reason, right? I assess children all the time. They meet criteria for ADHD more often than not. Is that because they have endogenous ADHD? Or is it because they're sleep deprived and their brain is having difficulties with attention, difficulties with impulse control, right? They're too tired during the day to make, well thought out rational decisions. And so, maybe they're a little impulsive. In addition to diminished attention and inhibition and other executive functions, there's a reduced ability to form memories. And this is really interesting because research shows us that it's particularly positive memories that tend to be lost when a child or when a person is sleep deprived. That means of all the stuff that you remember the next day, you're much more likely to remember the negative stuff, right? That sucks. Right? So not only now are we tired and we have poor attention, but we're not going to recall the good stuff that happens as much as we are the negative. That in turn causes an increased likelihood in depression, anxiety, behavioral dysregulation like tantrums. In older children, there's also an increased likelihood of risk-taking behaviors. So alcohol and drugs, sexual acting out, smoking cigarettes, vaping, even suicidal behaviors. There is an increased risk of suicidal behaviors in sleep-deprived kids, even when they are not depressed and even when they are not using toxic substances. And that's a really scary thought. Children who are sleep deprived, people, I'm saying children, but it's all of us. There's no difference in adults, teens, children. We're more likely to be overweight. And this is because the body cues of being able to tell when your appetite is satiated, you lose that ability when you are sleep deprived. So that causes you to overeat, become overweight. Metabolism tends to malfunction when we're sleep deprived also, which again will cause an increase in weight. People who are sleep deprived have reduced academic and occupational performance. We all know if we have a poor night's sleep and we go to work the next day, we're not going to be at our best, right? There's also an increased incidence of sports-related injuries. So if you have athletes at home and they're trying to balance all their practices with their homework and their home responsibilities, right? And so what tends to get cut out, right? Well, you have to do your homework even if it's midnight, right? Sleep gets cut out. It's not the practices, it's not the homework, it's not the responsibilities, it's sleep. And this is going to cause your teenage athletes to have more injuries. And on the flip side of that, because we have, during sleep is when our cells repair themselves, we're also not going to recover from those injuries as fast as we would if we had good, consolidated, and consistent sleep. Finally, there is a higher rate of car accidents for sleep-deprived teens, and car accidents are the #1 cause of teenage death. So again, I cannot stress enough how important it is for kids and teenagers to get enough sleep. Okay, so sleep in adolescence. Frequently I have patients come in and there's a big problem with their teens because they don't want to go to bed, right? They want to stay up. They want to stay up later. They want to be doing their homework at midnight, 2 a.m. Then they can't get up for school the next day. And so it's this, this kind of crazy cycle. Interestingly, we know from research that the teenage brain has a biological tendency for a 2-hour sleep delay. That means on average, the teenage brain doesn't start releasing melatonin and getting sleepy until almost 11 o'clock at night. So the average positive sleep time for teenagers would be about 11 to 8 a.m. 11 p.m. to 8 a.m. would be their kind of like sweet spot for their brain to be able to sleep and do all the things that it needs to do. That means that their brains are more alert up until about 11 o'clock, right? So when your kid is like, I'm tired after school, I'll do my homework after dinner, they're actually listening to their body cues. So obviously the problem with this is that, particularly around here, our schools do not start at 8:30 in the morning, right? They start at 7:30 in the morning, which means we are waking our kids up way earlier than their brains want to be waking up. And we're asking them to do difficult cognitive processing on top of it. So some school districts across the country have listened to the research, and yeah, it happens. And they've shifted the school times for the older kids. So high schools might start at 8:30 or 9 a.m. And the differences are truly remarkable. Let's see, they have academic gains that have included an increase in grade point average, fewer absences and tardies, and less sleeping in class. They've noted behavioral changes included lower rates of depression, less use and abuse of caffeine, and a significant drop in the rate of risky behaviors. So here we're talking sexual activity, drug activity, alcohol consumption, and safety-related concerns like driving the cars too fast or playing around while driving. There's also an enormous drop in car crashes for the teens attending these schools who shifted their start times. The percentages ranged from 6 to 70% fewer motor vehicle accidents, with the higher rates being associated with later start times. So if a school shifted their start time to say 7:45 from 7:30, maybe there was like a 6 to 15% drop in accidents. If the school started at 9:30, it was closer to 70% drop in car accidents with the teenage drivers. Absolutely amazing. So there's little doubt why the American Medical Association, the Center for Disease Control, and the American Academy of Pediatrics have all issued statements on shifting our teenage school times. So shifting high school to later times to really understand and appreciate the impact of sleep deprivation. So with kids having to sleep when their body is not wanting to, right, we have a couple problems here. We have a decrease in REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep, which means our kids don't dream as much as they once did. Now, dreaming doesn't sound like such a huge deal, except that while we are in REM sleep, while we are dreaming, this is where we're problem solving. This is where we're processing our emotions. This is where concentration, physical coordination comes from. And this is where we're consolidating our memories. We're making sense of the world that happened during the day so that we can take that information and apply it in the world tomorrow. Lack of REM sleep is associated with increased stress, anxiety, depression, weight gain, and even hallucinations. So this is really, it's really a big problem. Okay. Okay. So what do we do about this, right? We want to talk to our kids and explain some of this to them so that they understand what's going on. And more importantly, we want to find the thing about our kid, our individual children, that's going to motivate them to make changes, right? So if your child is an athlete, you might want to focus on, hey, did you know that your body is more likely to not be injured and to heal from injury much better if you get enough sleep? Right? If you've got a kid whose grades are the most important thing, then talk to them about how sleep affects their attention and their focus and their ability to remember all the stuff that's presented during classes. If you have a child who is really into their physical health, you're going to want to talk to them about those things, about, whether it's, understanding your body cues and your metabolism, or not gaining weight, or attention and focus, whatever it is that is going to affect them or motivate them to make some changes is really what you want to talk to them about. If you have a kid that's struggling with mood, you have a kid that's got some depression, some anxiety, which is like everybody today, right? The pandemic has given us all the gift of anxiety. Then you want to talk about those emotional correlates with sleep. So it's really important. We don't want to talk at our kids. We don't want to shove all this, boring information down their throats. But we want to pick and choose the information that's going to be the most motivating to them. Because changing the way that you sleep, changing your daily habits, it's hard. Anybody who's tried to do an exercise program or a weight loss program or a strengthening thing, like, it's hard. It's hard to do the new thing every day and to keep it going and to keep motivated. It takes a lot of, as my grandma would say, chutzpah, right? You gotta really want it to make some of these changes. Okay, so We are going to talk now about sleep hygiene or better sleep habits. This goes for grown-ups every bit as much as it does for children, but there's a couple things that are going to look a little bit different. For everybody, keep a consistent schedule. And this is for a couple reasons. Our brains crave structure. So if we know that we go to bed at a certain time, we eat dinner at a certain time, and within reason, doesn't have to be exact, but we have this general flow of the day, our brain is going to know when to start releasing melatonin, right? That is the thing in our brain that makes us be able to calm down and fall asleep. Okay. You want to keep a consistent nighttime routine, and you want to make it enjoyable. Rushing around the house, picking up the floor, getting all the laundry and toys in your arms while you're trying to throw stuff in the bins it belongs in, that is not relaxing. That is not, at least for myself, that is not enjoyable, right? It's much better to do something like sit in a rocking chair, have a cup of tea, take a bath. And I'll talk in a minute about why that is kind of like a 1-2 punch. But you want to do something that's enjoyable and calming. So maybe it's reading a book, maybe it's snuggling your kid or your puppy, whatever it is that just kind of brings you down a little bit, kind of calms you and puts you in a decent mood is going to be helpful. When we take baths, it increases our body temperature, right? Because typically we're taking a hot bath or a warm bath, right? So our body temperature increases. And then in the hour or two after the bath, your body temperature drops. One of the cues for our body to get sleepy is a drop in temperature. So this is why, like, our grandmas and great grandmas and great great grandmas and all the way back would say, give your kid a bath at night, it'll make them sleepy. Yeah, it's not the water, right? But they're absolutely right. You give your kid a bath at night, right? And it helps to afterwards drop the body temperature, which makes the body feel sleepy. Awesome. If you're struggling with sleep, if you're struggling with keeping a consistent schedule, try keeping a sleep log. This can be super useful if you think there might be something wrong with your sleep, if you feel like you've tried everything, but you just can't sleep, right? If you are going to be going to a doctor or a therapist or a sleep specialist or something and talk about the sleep, first thing we say, 2 weeks, keep a sleep log and then come back, right? So you can do it yourself, save your copay, and then just bring the sleep log in, be like, look, I've already been doing it, right? Now you've got some data to work with. You want to keep your bed for sleeping, and for the adults, for sex, right? That is what a bed is for. We don't want to be doing our homework. We don't want to be doing our work. We don't want to be having family meetings. We don't want to be watching TV or scrolling on the phone, right? Keep the bed for what its purpose is. That's going to make it a lot easier for your brain to differentiate. When you see the bed, you have an automatic stimuli that your brain's going, ooh, bed, I know what to do. I'm going to release some melatonin, right? I'm going to get sleepy now. So we want to keep our bed and our bedrooms as much as we can for what it's for. Caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol. Not great things. Hopefully the kids aren't anywhere near those things. But we really want to prevent ingesting any of those 4 to 6 hours before we go to sleep. A lot of people will say, oh, alcohol helps me fall asleep. I need that glass of wine or whatever. Excuse me. The problem is, yeah, it might help you fall asleep, but what happens as soon as the alcohol wears off? You wake up And now you have like this rebound effect where it's harder to fall back asleep. So you might sleep for an hour or two, but then you're in trouble. So we really do want to limit caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol 4 to 6 hours before we go to sleep. Exercise. This is a tricky one. Exercise during the day actually helps us get better sleep. However, exercise within 4 hours of going to sleep can actually do the opposite. So you have to kind of balance here. If it's the only time you can get your exercise in, then try to balance it. Do it as early as you can, before you go to bed, and see, and maybe this is a great time to keep a log, see how well you sleep. Maybe you can shift your exercise to right after work. If you can't do a morning workout, then at least you've got a couple hours between, if you exercise, then you eat your dinner, then you do, your nighttime stuff, and then you go to sleep. At least you've built in a time buffer. And then the last thing on here is don't watch the clock. This is so hard sometimes. But what it does is it increases our anxiety, right? We're literally watching the minutes go by going, oh my God, I'm not sleeping yet, right? This is, it's for the same reason that we want to keep a consistent schedule, because if we don't, we tend to lay there and think about not sleeping. And that is a horrible feeling. Maybe we're thinking about what tomorrow is going to be like. If we don't have a consistent schedule, we're going to spend a lot of nighttime thinking about what's going to happen the next day, right? If we have a consistent schedule, it's like, yep, same thing, right? And then I can kind of put it out of my head. So things like worrying about the day that's coming or watching the clock, it really breeds a lot of anxiety. And if anything can keep us awake longer, it is anxiety, right? So we want to do what we can to kind of minimize that. So these are kind of general things for adults. Now I'm going to talk about things that you can do also for you, but more for kind of watching in your children and helping them facilitate better sleep. Okay, so we want to consider our environment. Dark is good, right? If we don't have window treatments on and it's summer and it's getting really bright really early, that's going to make it more difficult, to be able to sleep up until the time you want to get up in the morning. If you live in a highly populated area, there's going to be a lot of lights outside. We want to make sure that as much as we can, the room that we're sleeping in is dark. This does not mean if your child has nighttime fears that they can't have a nightlight. Nightlights are awesome. Okay, but see if you can get something that's a very soft light, that's a colored light, something that isn't like right by their eyes, but maybe at the opposite side of the room, that gives them a sense of comfort, as opposed to like a glaring light bulb right next to their bed. We want to keep the temperature cool. Again, our body, one of the cues that we have to release our sleepy time goods up here is the drop in temperature. So we want to keep our bedrooms cool. It is much better to have a cool bedroom and lots of blankies than the other way around. It makes for a much better night's sleep. Quiet. Obviously, it's nice if you're trying to fall asleep that it is quiet. But again, like the dark, sometimes too quiet can be unnerving. So we use things like sound machines. There are a million wonderful and very inexpensive sound machines that you can use. Sometimes a fan is all you need, and then it helps you get cool, and it helps, with the sound. It kind of drowns out sound machines, fans, anything like that, they drown out the sounds from the house and from the environment that are going to happen that might be startling, right? A car goes by or somebody closes the fridge door downstairs, right? That kind of white noise is going to drown that out, but it's also going to create an environment where it's just kind of like low key chill, right? And that's what we need to go to sleep. All right, so we want to calm our bodies. It's really interesting when you read the literature on pediatric sleep and you realize that, like, we don't talk to our kids about how to relax. We don't tell our kids, if you keep your body still, it's easier to fall asleep, right? Like, I don't know that anybody ever told me that. We kind of think as adults, like, well, yeah, right? I'm going to be calm. Um, but it's very interesting because kids sometimes need to be told very explicitly, right, that we need to relax our minds, we need to relax our bodies. One of the things that we like to do is tell kids to stay as still as they can for a couple of minutes. And depending on how old they are, it might only be a couple seconds, and that's okay. But really focus on keeping the body still, right? If you don't fall asleep, you can get your wiggles out and you can try it again. But it's an active way of trying to keep the body calm, right? You can try something like progressive muscle relaxation. This is one of my favorite ways to calm my body. I'm one of those people who has a zillion thoughts racing around in my brain all the time. It is very hard to quiet that. So I start with my body. Right? I quiet my body, and then that in turn helps to calm my brain. So, progressive muscle relaxation, kind of in a nutshell, is we go through each part of the body, tensing and relaxing. So, you start at your toes and you tense as tight as you can, and then you relax it. And you kind of walk through the different muscle groups in your body. It's a really, really nice way, not only of taking your thoughts, right? You're distracting your mind and you're putting the focus on your body, which you're actively making calm down, but you're also kind of slowing down the thoughts because you have to stay focused on the different muscle groups. So it's a really neat way to kind of help yourself fall asleep or help your children or your partner fall asleep. Let's see, what else do we have? So we want our kids to stay in bed, right? We don't want them getting up, jumping around and, coming downstairs, whatever. We want to help train our kids to be able to stay in bed. And sometimes that's a process, right? You are not there and our kids want to be where we are, right? So if you leave the room and you go in the kitchen to clean up, or you go in the living room to, watch a show or to do your yoga or whatever, your kid's going to want to be with you. So kind of working through over a couple of weeks, trying to get them to stay in their bed longer and longer. The idea is that if they're calm enough, that they'll be able to fall asleep quicker. And so the time spent out of the room, right? Because that's our time, right? We get the kids to sleep, and that's like, sometimes it's the only time we have to ourselves or with our partners. So that's a really important time. So we want to help our kids be able to kind of make that transition into their own room so that they're finding their space, their time, their calm. Okay. Talked about calming your body. Now we're going to talk about calming your mind. So there's a couple different things that we can do that are very easy to do ourselves or to teach our kids. One is to repeat a mantra. This can be like a song that you like. This can be a positive self-statement. It could be silliness. It doesn't matter what the content is, as long as it's, positive or neutral. But just the act of repetition, right? It's boring, right? And so it helps to calm our thoughts. The mantra also helps to keep our cognitive energy not on all those millions of things that are running through your head all the time, right? We're keeping that focus so that we can fall asleep. Imagery. How many cartoons have we seen where somebody is counting sheep, right? I don't know where that came from, but it's brilliant, right? The idea is you're using imagery. Again, you're focusing all of your cognitive energy, you're focusing your entire brain on imagining something that is neutral or positive, right? And it's repetitive. And so you're keeping your mind kind of going through this endless cycle until you literally fall asleep, right? So using imagery is really important. With my patients, I like to create a happy place. This is something that when they feel bad, whether it's they're sad or they're scared or they're angry or whatever, they have a place in their mind that they can go to. And so we build this, beautiful, happy place. And it's very specific to that person, right? So what you can do at nighttime, it's the best time to practice your happy place, but it also helps them fall asleep because they're using imagery and they're focusing all that cognitive energy on something. So they're not worrying about the next day, or they're not having all the thoughts of, what happened today? What could I have done better? Why did I say that? Who's going to be there tomorrow? Right? None of those thoughts are happening because we're just super focused on our happy place. The positive statements, this is like for the people who are the clock checkers, who are getting worried about, oh my gosh, it's 11:30 and I still haven't fallen asleep. I'm never going to get good sleep, right? They tend to kind of repeat like a mantra, only it's very negative, right? And what we don't want is for that to become self-fulfilling, right? I'm never going to fall asleep. Uh-oh, right? That's the absolute opposite of what we want to happen. So maybe we say something like, I'll be asleep in just a few minutes. That's going to feel good, right? Or, gosh, I love my pillow. Or, something positive about the sleeping process. I love my bed, right? And again, the content of what you're saying doesn't matter as much as that it is positive or neutral, right? And again, that repetitiveness, that's what helps to bring your thoughts down and calm them. Whoops. Hold on one second there. I'm going the wrong way. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. All right. So next up, we have get up and move. Now, this seems counterintuitive, okay? We do want our kids to be still, but there's only so long we can lay there and not sleep. So if you're genuinely struggling and you've been laying there 15 minutes and nothing's happening, get up, do something boring. For a kid, this might be just, walk around the room, or, try going to the bathroom. You don't want to read something that you're excited about reading. Um, in some of the research studies, they had people like reading the phone book. I can't imagine, doing that. And I don't know that most families have phone books anymore. So, but the idea is just to do something that's not very entertaining, um, and try that for 10 to 15 minutes, and then get back into bed and try your strategies again, whether it's calming your mind, calming your body, um, trying the progressive muscle relaxation or whatever. So sometimes getting up and coming back to bed and starting over can be really helpful. But don't let that discourage you. Again, we want to stay positive. Okay, well, I'm going to get up. I'm going to try this now. And this time I'm going to be able to fall asleep. Resetting your clock. Now, this is not the clock that is next to your bed. This is your biological clock. So when we were talking about teenagers and that shift that they have in their biological clock, this is the clock that we're talking about. So there's a couple things that you can do to get better sleep. If you're having trouble sleeping at night, try waking up earlier. Again, it seems counterintuitive, and often it takes a couple, days, maybe a week to get into this. But if we wake up earlier, then our body's going to start to get sleepy earlier, meaning we're going to be able to fall asleep at a better time, at a more appropriate time for our life, right? As soon as we wake up in the morning, we want to expose our eyes to bright lights. So in the winter in Chicago, this is going to be artificial light, right? We don't have a whole lot of bright lights kicking half the year, but right now it's pretty light, pretty early in the morning. If it's not light enough or you don't have windows, then flip your lights on as soon as you wake up in the morning. This is going to help your clock know it is daytime, right? And we're on a 24-hour schedule, right? That is our biology. So it's going to, again, help you get back to sleep at an appropriate time later. Sometimes first thing in the morning, I don't know about you guys, I'm super groggy and one of those people that like stumbles to my coffee. If you can, if there's time, if it works and you can get active first thing in the morning, and it doesn't have to be like, running or anything super duper active, but even just doing some stretches or running up and down the stairs, grabbing, usually just getting your kids ready is pretty active, right? Depending on their age. But that can also help us really set our body up for the day so that it's ready to retire come evening. Let's see. That is about it on resetting your clock. Okay, getting physical. We just talked about kind of in the morning being a little bit more active to kind of give our body the cues that now it's daytime, now I'm moving, right? Daytime exercise, and this is anything prior to 4 hours before you go to sleep or before you want to go to sleep. Daytime exercise is one of the best things we can do to get our bodies ready for sleep later. Not only are we expending energy that we need to get back, right? We expend the energy on exercise. We need to build it back up during sleep. But it's really good for us. And so it helps our body to be moving like the well-oiled machine that it's supposed to. Exercise isn't for everybody. Maybe we don't have an exercise program, or maybe we don't have a whole lot of time. Just movement can be enough to help get your body ready for sleep. So maybe that's, every hour getting up from your desk and, doing a lap around the office. Or maybe it's walking outside the perimeter of your yard and then coming back in. Certainly easier to do some of that now that it's getting nicer. Um, but it's really important just to keep your body moving. And no naps. I love naps, so it hurts me at my very core to say this, but naps are not our friend if we are trying to set our biological clock up for good sleep. If you're going to take a nap, you want it to be short. You want it to be, 20 to 60 minutes tops. You want like a refresher nap. If you take a nap and you wake up sleepier than when you laid down for the nap, you should not be napping. You should definitely be getting better sleep at night, right? That's what's called excessive daytime sleepiness, which we'll talk about in a little bit. When our kids get home from a long day of school, some kids need to veg. They need to chill. They do not necessarily need to sleep, right? But they need some downtime. And this can be, this can look very different for different children. But unless they're very young, I do not recommend actual sleep. Screen time. Okay. This is where all the parents are nodding and all the kids are like terrified. Oh my God, what's she going to say? So first of all, screen time since the pandemic, we've shifted quite a bit in what we consider to be appropriate in terms of time spent on screens. We've had to for some reasons. But in general, when it comes to sleep, we do not want our kids or our adult brains to be on a screen for 30 to 60 minutes before bed. So this means phones. This means iPads. This means anything that is close to them, that close to their eyes. This means anything like any video games where there's lots of movement and, high stakes. Oh my God, if I don't get to this level, for multiple reasons, we want to keep these away from bedtime. I have a lot of families ask me if it's okay to sit on the couch with your kids and snuggle and watch a TV show or a movie. That is much better than, say, being on a cell phone or an iPad right in front of your face. It is still a screen, but if that's the way that you chill out with your family, I'm not going to take that away from you, right? That's really important to some families. If on the other hand, you're all sitting there on 4 different screens, let's turn some of them off. We want to limit the blue light that comes from many of these screens. When the blue light comes in to the brain, it reduces the ability to form melatonin, which we talked about is, that's our sleepy time goods. That's what we need in our brain for our body to recognize all the signals to be able to fall asleep. Okay. So we want to make sure that we are limiting the blue light. They have filters and lenses and all sorts of things that can help you reduce blue light. And if you're an adult and you have to be working until late, maybe that's a great idea. That's not oh, cool, now the kids can sit on their phones and have this blue light limiter. Like, they're still getting, this fast-paced, crazy input regardless of the blue light, they're still getting all of that right before bed. And it's very hard to calm a brain that has just been so hyper engaged in something like a video game. Okay. Charging station refers to the idea that our screens do not belong in our bedrooms, and kids should not have to police themselves when it comes to technology overnight, because your kid may know the rules and know that they shouldn't, be on the phone. That doesn't mean that their friends aren't on their phones texting your child at all hours of the night, right? And we want to be good friends, so we always respond. So phones have no business being in the bedrooms. I like to recommend to families that you have a charging station downstairs or away from the bedroom part of the house, kitchen, dining room, something like that, where everybody, including parents, everybody plugs their phones and iPads and whatever in overnight. And then the kids will say, oh, but I need my phone. I set my alarm on there, right? There are alarm clocks that do not have like computers attached to them. And, you can go to Menards or Walgreens or any other store and buy like a $10 alarm clock. So I recommend you do that. So unless there is an emergency, kind of reason that you need your phone as an adult, right? You work for the fire department, or you're on call, or you're, okay, keep your phone by you, but let's not be on Facebook right before bed. But children, there's no reason a child or a teen needs to have that in their room overnight. It also keeps them from going to school and being like, oh, my iPad's not charged, right? Because they were all charging overnight. I even put my Fitbit on the charging station overnight. So otherwise I would forget and it would never be charged. Another thing that can help us fall asleep is having a snack. Now, we want to make sure it is an appropriate snack. High fat and spicy foods actually make it harder for us to fall asleep. So even though they are delicious, right? That's not the best way to have a snack. We want high glycemic carbohydrates. So bread, crackers, a bagel, a potato, those are things that will actually help us fall asleep. Things that have tryptophan in them. We always talk about tryptophan in the turkey at Thanksgiving. That's why everybody falls asleep, right? That will help you fall asleep. Lycopene, which is found in tomatoes, that will help you fall asleep. Having that kind of like high carb snack can really help our bodies. A banana, low fat yogurt, those are kind of great, quick, easy things to have before bed. Okay, so some final thoughts on sleep. Changing your sleep patterns or trying to get more sleep, which means not doing something else most of the time, right? You're missing out on something else if you're sleeping more. It's hard. It's hard work. But these are lifelong skills. For the rest of our lives, we need to be getting decent sleep. And so these, spending time in their youth is going to make it that much easier when they are off in college and, trying to figure this out for themselves, or when they're young adults, or when they become parents, right? Sleep is very important when you got little babies. Don't be afraid to reach out for help. People struggle with sleep. There are many, many sleep disorders that can affect kids, adults. Don't be afraid to reach out. You can talk to your pediatrician or your physician. You can go to a sleep clinic. You can talk to a therapist who works with sleep. There's lots of us out there that can help. Okay, so here's a little infographic on how much sleep does my child need. I am not going to read this to you. It's right there. Look at the age of yourself or your children or your partner and see how much sleep should we be getting. And then ask yourself, how much sleep are you really getting? Now subtract that, right? Say as an adult, it says I should be getting 7 to 9 hours. We'll call that 8, right? That's kind of our typical. On average, we should be getting 8 hours of sleep. Say I average 6 hours of sleep per night because I'm very, very busy, right? That's 2 hours a night that I need, that I'm building a sleep deficit. At the end of the week, I have a deficit of 14 hours. If you missed 14 hours of work, would you have a job? 14 hours is a lot. It may not seem a lot when you're going, oh, I get 7 hours of sleep per night. You have almost a full day's worth of work in sleep debt that you need to make up to be able to have all the things that sleep does for us while we're sleeping. All right, questions. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand. You can pop a question into the chat box. I hope this has been helpful for you. I know as a college student, as a parent, as a business owner, as a child, like sleep is hard at different points in our life for different reasons. So, getting enough decent sleep can be very difficult. And it's one of those things where if it's not working, it affects, as we talked about, every part of our lives, right? We're grumpy. We can't pay attention. It takes us longer to do things. Our driving isn't really good, and that causes its own set of trouble. So for those of you who have listened to this tonight, I hope that it's helped. If anybody has further questions, you can absolutely contact me at Marvelous Minds. I'm going to reshare because my email is on there. Oh. It's supposed to be. All right. Oh, it's not on there. Okay. So my website is on here. It's www.marvelousminds.net. My email, if you would like it, is doclarson, DOCLARSON, at marvelousminds.net, right? Like it says down here. That's MARVELOUSMINDS.net. All right. If there are no questions, Melissa, you got anything there?
I'm not seeing any.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for listening to me ramble on about sleep tonight.
Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. You guys take care and enjoy the summer that just happened. Good night.
Good night.